While we're going over tools, we'd like to talk about different tools you can use to cut the fabric. Of course, your first and your main tool is going to be scissors. I use Fisker scissors. These little ones are very handy for getting in tight corners and making very delicate cuts. They're very accurate. They work really well, but there's no real right or wrong answer on scissors. It's whatever works for you. When you're cutting fabric, if you cut along and you reset, you're going to find some little lightning bolts on the fabric each time you reset, which can be an eyesore. So in some cases, it's easier if you get your cut started, hold your scissors, and then just pull them through. And sometimes you'll get a little bit of fraying, you'll notice. If you kind of pull that back, you'll see some threads. So when you're covering, you're going to see that in the real world. And even if you cover that over with another layer of fabric or tape, you may see that. The trick to eliminate that is take some EcoBond, mix it with some water, sometimes up to 50-50, and just brush a little bit of that on there where you're going to cut. Let that dry for 10 minutes or so, and then when you cut, you won't get any frays. Now at times you're going to need to make pinked cuts. If you're doing reinforcing patches, putting your doily over inspection covers, things like that. And there's a couple different ways we can show you how to do that. If you're cutting your fabric where you're going to have an overlap, we would recommend not doing a pink joint there because it will look a little funny underneath another layer of fabric. And it's very hard with pink ears to get a good straight cut. It's a lot easier to do that with scissors, so a straight cut is a better option on that. But when you do have to make a pinked cut, we sell the Florian Rotary Pinkers. These are a very handy tool. They do have a little bit of a learning curve though. There's a little bit of a trick to use. They have an anvil that the blade works against, and they have a pinking blade. And they're continuous, so they ratchet. They don't go backwards. That way you can make a continuous pink without seeing a reset. And the trick to these is just let them pull the fabric through. If you try to force the fabric or give any resistance on the fabric, you're going to find that it messes up the pink schedule a little bit. Now you can go around a curve with these as well, so you can cut your doilies and reinforcing patches and various things. Another way you can do this though, let's say you want to cut out a patch for an inspection ring. You can take something you want to use for a pattern. This is a lid off a coffee can. You can pick whatever works for you, whatever's the right size, and use a pencil to mark your fabric. Don't use a marker or anything like that because it can show through all the coatings. You don't want that. A pencil will be covered up by the primer and you'll never see it. Just go ahead and make your circle. Once you have a circle, you can take these kind of rotary pinkers that we get from a fabric supply store like Joann's or Amazon, wherever you want to get them. And you can go right around that. Just start on your edge. It takes a fairly firm pressure, and I'm cutting this on a cutting mat, so make sure you have a cutting mat. And just take your time. Those take a little bit of practice as well to keep exactly on the line. But that's another great way to make a doily or a reinforcing patch. Another option for cutting fabric is the fixed pinking shears. They're just like a pair of scissors except they have the pinking teeth cut in them. These have limited application. They're okay for certain things, but as you'll see when you're cutting, each time you reset, unless you're really careful and line them up, you're going to have a noticeable mark in the pinks. If you take your time, you can make them work, but if you're doing a large area, it's pretty difficult to do with these. One thing they're really nice for though is if you have like a piece of finish tape and you want to cut pinks across the end of it, they work great for that. And you can even come around and cut a curve out with them generally if it's a narrow tape and not have to reset.